And so that is often the perspective that I go with. I always look at my lessons and think to myself, if this student never goes to college, how will they use this information that I'm giving to them in the real world?
You're listening to episode 30. Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I geek out about the stories we're passionate about in all different genres, styles, and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I started this podcast during the summer of 2020 at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. As I watched the reaction of my friends, family, and social media circle, I noticed that many people turned to stories for comfort and help in making sense of the craziness going on around them. My goal was to do the same for my listeners, but as I chatted with my guests throughout the first year, I discovered that their personal stories were the most fascinating thing about each episode. Neil Gaiman says, "Fairy tales are more than true, not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." I now know that sharing our experiences with others helps us defeat our own dragons. It is our stories that connect us to one another. Let's see what wisdom today's guest has to share with us. Today, I'm recording episode 30, and I'm talking with one of my former high school students, Mark Zepeda, who is now... Are you teaching English at Douglas High School?
Yes, I'm an English teacher at Douglas High School.
That's great. And so I hooked up with another one of my former Douglas students, and I wanted to talk to Mark too, because I enjoyed teaching you so much. And Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you for
You're
asking me. This is really like, when I told my fiance that I was going to be on a podcast, she was just like, that's amazing. Because I am constantly listening to podcasts.
Really?
Oh yeah, all day. If you see me out and about, like if I'm at Walmart by myself or doing just like whatever, I always have one headphone in and I'm always listening to something. And so when you sent me that message, like I couldn't say yes fast enough. I was like, yeah. Of course I want to be on a podcast. Record my voice. Let me be embarrassed. I don't care. Let's go.
Oh, Mark, you're just the way I remember you. Well,
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Oh, no, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Because you always used to make me laugh. Yeah. So my husband listens to a lot of them too. And so sometimes I have to, when I'm talking to him, I have to be sure I'm looking at him to see if he has his AirPods in so that I know to go, I want to talk to you. The etiquette of podcast listening.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Well, since this is Story Power, Mark, I wanted to know how you got hooked on stories, because I know one of your favorite superhero characters, and I'm not going to mention them right now. I'll let you talk about him. But how did you get hooked on stories?
Well, so what you mentioned and how I got hooked on stories is actually two separate things. And I'll address both of them.
Okay.
How I actually got into stories was actually through the Harry Potter series.
Oh,
I like growing up, I was like I was relatively average. I liked superheroes in passing. I liked all these things in passing. As a little kid, I was super obsessed with Toy Story. To this day, I can still recite the first 20 minutes of the first Toy Story by memory. But they were just like little obsessions that I had. They were never like, oh, I want to learn more. I want to read more. I want to do more. But then I remember one time the first Harry Potter movie was coming out. It was 2001. I was 9-10 years old. And my oldest sister, who was 8 years older than me, so she was, 18, 19 at the time. And she was going on a date with this guy, and he was just trying to make nice with the little siblings. And so he took us to the movies, and I had never heard of Harry Potter. I had never, even knew it existed. And we went to see it. And I remember sitting there in the movie theater at the Douglas movie theater, which is now closed. But I remember sitting there in awe. I was just like, what is this? Like, this is a thing. And then the next day I was talking to my friend about it. And he's like, oh yeah, there's books. I was like, there's books? There's more of this? And so immediately, and little Mark didn't know that they were in an order. And so I picked up whichever was at Walmart, which was The Prisoner of Azkaban. So I watched Sorcerer's Stone, which is part 1.
Yes.
And then I just skipped Chamber of Secrets, which is part 2. And I went directly to Prisoner of Azkaban, which is part 3. That was my first one reading. And I was so lost, but I didn't care because like I was so fascinated by that world and that whole world building and everything like that. And like, as I grew up and as I read it, I realized that one of the reasons why I liked it was, it didn't talk down to kids. Like it started off as a very simple, chosen one versus evil type story. But like, as it evolved, like it essentially was World War II, where Voldemort was Hitler and he wanted to kill everyone who wasn't pure blood and et cetera. And like, these are real ugly issues that were presented to children in such a way that they understood it. And I realize now, especially now when you sent me the email telling me what we were going to talk about, I was thinking about that and I realized that almost everything that I watch or consume or listen to or whatever, read, which I don't read that much anymore because I don't have time. My son's about to be 2, so we're reading Daniel Tiger. Like that's where we're at. A lot of Daniel Tiger, a lot of dinosaur stuff. So that's my literature right now. So anyway, like I was saying that a lot of things I consume now are mostly coming of age stories, but that deal with really heavy issues in a way that doesn't talk down to the viewer, that respects their intelligence. It's not one of those issues like, essentially baby talk, they're
right.
And so that's the thing that I was reading from Harry Potter. That's what I was getting. I was like, man, they're in the 4th or 5th one, I don't remember. They're all just one story in my head now. But in the 4th or 5th one, they were dealing with liberating the house elves, which were essentially slaves to these people. And, it was all these really, really heavy issues. And I mean, even to this day, I still consume a lot of media that is definitely aimed at children, but it deals with heavy issues. And I absolutely adore it. Like, you can't see, no one can see me because this is a podcast and it's an auditory medium, not a visual medium. But if you could see me, you would see that I'm wearing a Little Mermaid shirt. I have Superman tattoos. I have Mickey Mouse with the Deathly Hallows inside of it. I'm wearing Wonder Woman socks. Like, I'm very much still a child, but I do really enjoy those types of stories.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I do too, though. And I'm way older than you. So I still sometimes read young adult stuff or even middle grade fiction sometimes.
Well, that's really all I read. I can't watch anything depressing because I'm very I'm very sensitive. So like when I watch things that are depressing, it gets to me and it weighs me down. So I actually really do avoid a lot of media. If I find out that it's really depressing, if there's a lot of people that are just dying left and right for no reason, or even if any reason really, I tend to avoid those things. I just don't like it. It just bogs me down.
It sounds to me like you're a highly sensitive person, empathetic. Yeah. So
shocking. I did theater in high school and I'm very sensitive. Oh my gosh. So shocking.
Yes, and you even played Dracula. Oh my goodness.
So hang on. Sorry. You mentioned Dracula and I just want to jump on that real quick. I always remember I have this memory of Dracula where we were rehearsing. And I'm pretty sure I pissed you off because like I was a really annoying child. I'm a really annoying adult. So I wouldn't be surprised. But I was doing a scene with Lara. And she had died, I think. I don't remember. But she on the floor. And I went down to pick her up and weep. And I knelt and I picked her up. And I knelt on her hair. And then I picked her up while still my knee was still on her hair. And so I just like that memory pops into my head every now and then whenever I see anything Dracula related. Dracula is not like menacing to me anymore because I see any Dracula media and I'm immediately like, I knelt on that girl's hair. And then I literally yanked it out of her scalp when I lifted her up to cry over her body.
Oh, so. I don't remember that at all.
Well, you were dealing with teenagers. And so I don't blame you.
Well, it was much better than dealing with seventh graders. The first year in Douglas, I taught seventh grade, and oh my goodness.
Oh, I taught second grade my first year.
Oh boy, I nearly died. Well, second graders are still, you can sort of, because I used to work in lots of child development centers and daycare centers and Montessori schools, and little kids, you can kind of herd them, but
yeah, but I'm far too sarcastic. And so I made kids cry, not on purpose, but it happened. It's just, yeah.
High school kids love that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yes. And I mesh very well with I teach freshmen and we'll talk about that whenever we get to it. But I teach freshmen and I adore it. I see every year when it comes to the, so do you want to change grade levels or anything? It's always no, I do not. I like this grade level. I like freshmen. Sophomores, juniors, and seniors are way too serious. I can't handle that. The freshmen, they're still kids.
And they need somebody to kind of help them through. Because I did teach a couple of classes, or maybe just one, of freshmen, and it was kind of fun.
Oh, I have so much fun. Yeah,
I taught sophomores and juniors as well, freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. I never got to teach seniors. I thought that would have been fun, but I'm teaching college now, so that's really fun. I'm having fun doing that.
Yeah, that'll be an avenue that I take much, much later.
When you're older.
I can only teach if I do end up going to the college, teaching college. I can only teach courses on education. My master's degree is in secondary education, so that's really all I will be able to teach.
Unless you want to get a master's in something else.
I already have enough debt,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know. I just paid off, believe it or not. I got my master's of education. I think it was 1999 or 2000. I just paid it off.
Well, I'm in a program where it's a loan forgiveness program for teachers. Mm-hmm. And so I'll still owe a little bit, but it takes 10 years. I have to be a teacher for 10 years while making minimum payments, yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. But,
How did you get the 10-year one? Because my cousin's son and his wife were in a 5-year. And they were in...
Well, the 5-year one is only up to $7,000. And the 10-year one is...
I see.
Much more.
So now that you've talked about how your love of teaching freshmen, which I applaud you. Some people say, oh, I would never teach high school. But high school, at least you can have a conversation with the students. But tell about your love of superheroes, and which one is your favorite?
Well, my son's name is Clark. So favorite one, the favorite superhero is a little self-explanatory. I have 2 Superman tattoos, and I've always been obsessed with Superman. The funny thing is, I don't really care for. I love Superman comics. I love the comics. I haven't read one in going on 8 or 9 years. Like once I started college, I didn't have time to keep up with them because they're monthly issues that come out.
Right.
And not only did I not have time, but I also didn't have money because comic books is an expensive hobby.
Now
each issue's it's it's an expensive hobby. And so I kind of fell off of it, but I think I watched the 1978 Superman when I was like 7 or 8, and I don't know why. I just fell in love with it, and I just fell in love with the stories. And as I got older, I fell more and more in love with them. And just it always irritates me because there are no good Superman movies. Like the 70s ones are good, but there aren't any great ones. Like there's just like the 70s ones, they have issues. Like they are too long and like not much happens in them. And that's like, I have no idea how 8-year-old me watched it, because now like 29-year-old me, I'll put it on and then I'll get into 20 minutes. And well, first off, the beginning credits is literally 5 minutes long.
Oh, I know. Well, I'm really glad that they changed that in Hollywood, because it used to be like that all the time. Yeah.
We just recently watched West Side Story for the first time. We had never seen it. It was just a blank. It was just a blank spot in both of my fiance and I, like our movie education. The other day, let's throw it on. And I hit play and I went, and, I do this a lot where I'll hit play and I'll go to the kitchen because we can still see the TV from the kitchen. And so I'll start making snacks or whatever. And then I'm looking at it, I was like, we're not even in credits. It's just a red screen. They just show a red screen for 5 solid minutes in that movie. Like 5, weird. I checked. Once it was finished, I paused the movie and brought up the time. And it was exactly 5 minutes.
Was it supposed to be the overture or something?
I wonder, because it is structured like a play. It is very much structured like a play, you know, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Like it even has a 2-minute intermission in the middle, which we just fast forward through.
Yeah.
And it is very much structured like a play.
Yeah,
I don't know what the plan was there.
When they play it on Turner Classic Movies, they don't do. I'm not sure they do the overture.
Yeah, I doubt they would, because especially when you're putting on cable, every minute is money. So like you want to make sure that you can get your audience as quickly as possible.
Unless they have like something that they use in front of the red screen, and then they have, because sometimes they'll do that. They'll have a static picture for you to look at while the overture is playing. They do that with Ben-Hur. There are bunches of them from that era that have overtures and. Yeah.
Oh, I am glad that we finally moved away. You can tell that we're in a new era of entertainment, because everyone's just trying to figure out what to do. Like, is this show meant to be binged, or is this show meant to be, 1 episode a week so that we can get a discussion going, those water cooler moments? Or do we just want everyone on different pages all at once?
You were talking about something when I got dumped off, and I forgot what it was now.
I was just going on about how we're kind of in a new era of storytelling where media is changing and it's different, and it's we're trying to figure out for listeners, I put air quotes around that, so there you go. Anyway, we're in the new era where we don't really know what we're doing, which, like, as you get older, we all learn that no one knows what they're doing.
That's right.
But it's one of those things where a lot of movies and TV shows are trying to figure out what to do. And, it's interesting to me to see that some shows dump all 8 episodes all at once for everyone to binge. Some shows still stick to the week by week. An interesting way of telling stories. And I personally am a week person, because I don't have time to sit there and watch 8 hours of content at once. So I personally prefer appointment viewing. What were we talking about? Superman?
That's right.
What we're talking about? Yeah.
Well, we did talk about Superman. So, you want to say more about that?
All I'll say is, because I have a platform right now, I absolutely love Superman. I think he's a great hero. I think oftentimes they focus too much on the godlike powers and not enough on the fact that he's an immigrant, and that the creators of Superman were Jewish immigrants during World War II, and their ideology was the idea of immigrants are people who they come to this land, in Superman's case, this planet, and they use their abilities for the betterment of everyone, for the betterment of people. And that is the ethos, essentially, of Superman. And there's this comic by Mark Waid. I think that's who it's by. It's called Birthright. And it has one of my favorite panels any Superman thing, because yes, he is all powerful. Yes, he is God, quote unquote, godlike. But one of the big things is that he doesn't like people who are just mean. And there's this issue, Birthright, in which there is a, trigger warning, but there is a school shooting in this issue of the comic. And the way comics are situated is that they're visual and, reading, you read and you see pictures, and each panel shows a different event. And it starts with, it shows the school, and then it shows a helicopter speaking. And it's like, we're now at blah, 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 blah school in which there's an active shooter, yada, yada, yada. Next panel is the guy with the gun. Next panel is a little girl screaming. Next panel is the nozzle of the gun, and then with fire coming out of it to illustrate that it's been shot. And the next panel is the Superman logo with a little ding coming off of it to show that the bullet had bounced off. And the next page is, so the next panel is you're inside the house, and it's the dude. They illustrate it so you can know it's a dude who sold the guns. And the next panel is just an open door with the silhouette of Superman and red eyes. And next panel is the seller all scared. And the next panel is Superman. And he looks at the guy and he says, today a little girl was screaming for her life, and she saw a gun shot in front of her face. And for the rest of her life, she's going to think about that. For the rest of her life, she's going to think about that. And the next panel is Superman picking up a gun, and he aims it at the person. And the next panel is this. It was scene for scene the same thing that happened to the little girl. And he pulls the trigger, and then you see the guy who sold the guns, and he's screaming, but he never gets shot, because the following panel is Superman plucking the bullet out of midair and pulling away and looking at the man and saying, "And now, so will you. You will also have that image burned into your mind." And to me, like, if you watch any of the modern Superman movies, it's all about doom and gloom and the world sucks and boo-hoo. And Superman's not a force for good. He's just a god among men, and everyone should worship him. And, if you watch the recent movies, you'll see that Zack Snyder is absolutely obsessed with Christian/Catholic imagery with his Superman. He's always showing him as a Christ-like creature, as a, there's so many analogies in which, Superman doesn't become Superman until he's 33. And that's something that they drive home. They make sure that that he's 33 years old. And then, just in case you didn't make the connection of what he's trying to say, the next scene in that film is Superman talking to a priest with literally Jesus Christ behind him. And it's like, that's, first off, not subtle. But second, that's not what this character is. And, I am obsessed with characters. Like, I love good characters. You can give me a bad story, but amazing characters, and I will watch it. I love characters. And it's just one of those things where I get so mad when I watch any Superman movie, because I'm like, that's just a depressing dude. Like, that's all it is. Like, that's all it is. And that's not a person that I want to watch. But anyway, yeah, I'm obsessed with Superman. I love Superman. I probably will get another Superman tattoo sometime in my life.
Oh, good. Yeah. You should talk to my former college student, Scott Hamilton. I talked to him on one of my podcasts, and he loves the Zack Snyder. He's a filmmaker too, but he loves them, and he loves Harry Cavill, but he also loves the 1978, all the ones with Christopher Reeve. He loves those too. But it's interesting. Well, it would be interesting to hear your debate.
Good filmmaker.
Oh yeah.
Zack Snyder is a good filmmaker. Like, I'm not trying to throw shade at his ability. He is a good filmmaker. My issue comes from the characterization. That's it. Like he would make an amazing Batman film. I have no question about that. I just don't think that he can capture the hopefulness of Superman. The reason why the comics that Batman and Superman are such an interesting thing to read is because there is a very big dichotomy between them. Batman is very much about vengeance, and he's very much about, I'm going to take the law into my hands, and I'm going to get results. Whether or not they're legal, I am going to get results. Whereas Superman is more of, no, we are not above the law. We don't, just because we have these gifts doesn't mean we're above the law. We are citizens. And so we can use these abilities for the betterment of whatever, but we still have to do it within the realm of the law. So Superman doesn't kill. Superman doesn't really beat people up. He outsmarts them. That's another issue with Zack Snyder's movies, in my opinion, is that whenever Superman faces a problem, his solution is punch hard. When to me, that's not a good motivation. That's not a good like how to solve an issue, to just punch harder. Oh, I don't know how to fix this. I'll just punch harder. And that is, even if you watch Man of Steel, the climax of the movie when he has to defeat the World Destroyer, he doesn't have to outsmart the machine. There's a scene where he's getting bombarded by the machine, and he doesn't have to outsmart it. It's not that he goes faster than the machine. He literally just puts his arm up and punches harder. And that was his solution, is punch harder.
I love hearing the two different takes on Superman. That's great. Do you have any other stories that you absolutely love?
So there was one that I absolutely wanted to make sure I talked about.
Yes.
It is a show. It started, I should have looked up when it started. Let's see. It probably started, my students told me about it. And it started maybe 7 or 8 years ago. It already finished up. It is on Cartoon Network. It is absolutely aimed at children. But it is one of the first animated shows to ever win a GLAAD award, which is, so for those of you who don't know, that GLAAD is an organization in which it stands for something I can't remember from the top of my head, but it is for LGBTQ plus representation. And the show is called Steven Universe. And I don't binge shows. I don't have time for it. And rarely is there a show that catches me that I really, really want to go through. But Steven Universe was one of those that I just devoured, and I just went right through it. And I've probably seen all the episodes 2 or 3 times because I love it. And it is this story about this boy. He's part human, part alien, sort of, and he is being raised by these group of women. And that race of aliens, it's so hard to explain because they're not really aliens. But anyway, I'm not going to go in and describe what the gems are. And that's how it starts. You know, he's trying to figure out his superpowers. But then as the show progresses, you meet new characters. There's one character whose name is Lapis Lazuli. And they're all named after like actual gems. So there's garnet, amethyst, rose quartz. Like they're all named after him. And then you meet Lapis, and Lapis is depressed, and she is dealing with stuff, and she has no idea how to deal with it. And so she just runs away. And that's her entire thing. Any time something gets hard, she runs away. And that's her thing throughout the entire show. And as more and more of these characters get introduced, and the more these characters get depth, you realize, oh, everyone has issues, real issues. One of the women that raises Steven, like that woman, as you learn that she resents Steven's dad, and you don't know why. She's always like, here comes Greg, like always. And you don't know why until you realize she was in love with Steven's mom, and like his mom died in childbirth. And so to her, it's Greg's fault, not Steven's. It's Greg's fault that Rose is not with us anymore. And it's this constant battle. And she's constantly like, there are moments where there's this one scene where the character's name is Pearl. And she's the one that's in love with Rose. Sorry, Pearl in love with Rose. Rose is Steven's mom. And there's this episode where Pearl is just staring out into she's on a cliff. She's sitting there. She's staring out into nothing. And she's just kind of talking to herself, and Steven is there, but you can tell she's having an inner monologue, and just Steven is there listening. And she's talking about how much it hurts to see Steven, but not see us, and how much it hurts her, and how much she would have done anything for Rose. And she only wishes that Rose was still there to see her and to appreciate what she's done. And there's this moment where Steven goes up behind her and hugs her, and he goes, I appreciate you. And she's facing away from Steven, and you see her tense up, and she just starts to weep, because that's the closest thing she can get is like, she's done what she could to take care of the woman she loves' son, and the son loves her, and that's as close as she'll ever get to be the woman she loved. And that's a kid's show. And there is so many dark analogies going throughout this show. There is one in which Lapis later on, it's so hard to explain, but she's in an abusive relationship, sort of, and she misses her abuser because she felt like the abuser was just doing what was right, and that she deserved that. And she misses her abuser. And Steven is just like, yo, that's wrong. Like, no, she essentially is going through this thing where she's like, I'm not good enough. That's why Jasper did this to me. I'm not good enough. Like, they were just trying to make me better. And Steven's like, no, that's not how that works. Like, you are good enough on your own. And there are so many deep and like borderline dark analogies that go on. And it's just, it goes back to that whole things that don't talk down to children, to show them that don't you ever allow yourself to be somewhere where the other person makes you feel lesser. It's okay to be alone. Okay. It's okay. You may not be with the person you want, but there are still people in your life that love you. You might be going through things, but there's still people who will listen to you. And you know what? You might like girls, and that's okay too. And to tell that to kids, and to make sure they know that, like, the original series, because there's a Steven Universe and then Steven Universe Future, which is a time jump into the future, and then they deal with Steven as a going into college age. Steven Universe deals with 14, 15-year-old Steven. Steven Universe Future deals with 17, 18-year-old Steven. But the original Steven Universe ends with a song. It's a musical show. There's songs all over the place, but it's a song where Steven is sitting with the people he loves, and he was trying to get accepted by a bunch of other people, and he realized, you know what, that's not worth my time. And the song, the lines in that song, it's the last song of the series, and it goes, I don't need you to respect me, I respect me. I don't need you to love me, I love me. But I'm sure you can get to know me if you change your mind. And it is such a beautiful last note for children. It is such a beautiful, like, it's okay to be different. It's okay to be weird. There's nothing wrong with you. You're weird, and that's okay. Everyone's a little weird. But if you find the people in your life that balances out that weirdness or makes it better, that's great. Find those people. Don't try to fit in with the people who you're supposed to fit in with. You don't need to. Find the people who love you because of who you are. And it's something that I personally had. This is why it got me so much at the time, because I was dealing at the time this is why I binged it. Because at that time I was 25. I was 25 and I had just moved back. I moved back to Douglas when I was 23. And so I was 24, 25 when I watched the show. And me, a 24-year-old man, straight man, who, for all intents and purposes, quote unquote, normal, I was sitting there dealing with, because I was trying so hard to come back to Douglas and go back into my old Douglas life. I came back and I tried to go back, but I realized, I'm like, that group of people that I used to hang out with, they are not my puzzle pieces. We don't fit together. And we didn't when I was younger either. It's just that we were friends for geographical reasons. And that's it. And now that I've left and come back, I've realized, like, so much of my mental health is affected because I don't fit what you think is normal. I don't fit what you believe is a normal adult man. And I watched Steven Universe, and it was like there are so many episodes that just made me weep. I just sat there and I cried. And like, I'll still watch those episodes now, 4 years after I've seen them for the first time. And I'll still get that lump in my throat because I remember feeling like that. I remember feeling weird. And Grant, if you know me, if for people who are listening, if you've ever met, you're well aware that I'm not a normal individual. You're well aware that I am strange, but that's okay with me. And I couldn't give two craps of whether or not you accept my weirdness or not. And a show aimed at preteens helped me understand that. And
that's great.
It's such a great show. The episodes are like 12 minutes long. And so it is a long show. Like, yeah, the episodes are 12 minutes long, but season 1 has like 40 episodes.
Oh, wow.
So, but it is, love that show.
That's great.
Love it.
Wow.
And if you're listening, please watch it. It's on HBO Max as well as Hulu.
I will put it in the show notes.
Yeah, it's a great show.
Do you have anything else you want to say about stories? Like when you're teaching and you're making the students read certain things, how do you approach talking to them about them?
A lot of times when teaching, I try really, really hard to really highlight universal themes in stories. One of my favorite things to teach is Romeo and Juliet. Shocking. But I adore teaching Romeo and Juliet because I teach it from the perspective that Shakespeare was writing a parody on teenage life, on how teenagers, no matter what the situation, that situation is the most dramatic thing they have ever experienced, period. Because oftentimes it is the most dramatic thing they've ever experienced because they don't have many life experiences yet. And so that's always the angle that I teach Shakespeare, specifically Romeo and Juliet. And I always love to go through and like really going back to characters, how I was talking earlier, that I'm obsessed with characters, breaking down those characters to see what they're trying to tell us. And so like Romeo is a player. He's a player and, he's jumping from woman to woman. And yes, when he sees Juliet, she is the most beautiful woman in the world at that moment. And, I always teach it from that perspective of like teenagers really do view the world like this, you guys. And like, no, we're not that dramatic. I was like, you absolutely are. So we go over it and we really break down the characters and I show them how, Romeo, useless character because all he does is he brings drama in everyone's life. Romeo is the catalyst for all the negative things that happens in that story. And I tell them, I was like, and I want you guys to think about a person in your life. Please don't say any names. But, I want you to think of a person in your life that is like that anytime they're in your story, they bring something negative into it. They bring the fights, they bring the negative cheeseman, whatever you want to say, they bring it in. And, imagine how much that affects your life. And then we go to Juliet. And I was like, now let's look at Juliet. Juliet is just trying to change her life. She is one of our first written, not the first, but one of the first written examples of a feminist character that has survived the test of time. And the student's like, oh my God, how? I don't believe you. I was like, well, let's look at it. Who proposes marriage? Who is being told that you are going to marry Paris and you're gonna like it. And what does she do? No, she takes her destiny in her own hands and she makes decisions. The entire story, she is making decisions. Romeo is reacting, whereas Juliet is very much proactive. She makes the decisions. She decides, she asks Romeo to marry her. She's the one that asks Friar for a solution, and she's the one that fakes her death. And then at the end, she's the one that stabs herself, and she makes these decisions. And so I break things down for students to a character level, and I look at universal themes. I don't break down like, what do you think he meant during this one sentence? Let's look at this one piece of dialogue and see how it unlocks the secret of the universe. No, that's bull. A lot of these kids will never use Romeo and Juliet in their real life. What they will use, though, is being able to analyze characters, whether or not they're watching movies, whether they're reading books, or whether they're just in the real world and they're looking at someone and they're like, I don't know about you. You are doing some very questionable things, and I am analyzing your character. And so that is often the perspective that I go with. I always look at my lessons and think to myself, if this student never goes to college, how will they use this information that I'm giving to them in the real world? How will they use this at the workplace? How will they use this if they work at the one of the main employers of this is the prison? If they work at the prison, how will they use the information that I'm giving them? Mm-hmm. And so that's how I kind of look at everything. How will they use this? And you know what? The kids who are college bound, they're going to get that too. And it's going to benefit them as well when they read stories and break down characters, because they're going to be able to see that this character affected the plot in this way. Whereas the kids who don't go to college, they'll be able to go to work and see this character affects the environment in this way. And it'll still have a similar result. That's how I teach English. That's my teaching philosophy a lot of times is if you just work at Walmart, how will you use this? Again, nothing wrong with working at Walmart. Please don't think I'm throwing shade at that. Anything that brings money into the house and you're able to feed your family, fantastic, do it.
I love your philosophy because that's usually how I kind of approach it. This story was written to teach us something. So what is it going to teach you? How are you going to use it? Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I always look at things and I go, what's the point? What's the point? Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times with my teaching, I look at things that I did in high school and I utterly cannot stand busy work. I cannot stand busy work. In my opinion, it belittles the education process. I don't like to refer to teachers as babysitters. We are not babysitters. But when we have individuals who just give busy work and they're like, oh, I just grade on completion. If they finished it, they get full points. No. Give them meaningful work that you want to grade. If you don't want to grade it, don't give it to them.
Right. Yeah.
That's my philosophy. And if that means you have less grades, but more meaningful grades, so be it. Do that. So I don't do busy work. Every portion of the assignments that I have picked, they are planned. And yes, there are a few assignments where I call them quote unquote throwaway assignments. But I almost never teach those assignments because they're quote unquote throwaway assignments because they're there for when there's a fire drill, which means everything that I had planned for you, I have to push to tomorrow. So you know what? That throwaway assignment that I have planned in 4 weeks, I'm throwing it away. It's very rarely that I get to my quote unquote throwaway assignments and actually have to teach them.
That's great. But, yeah. Well, just in case you're sick and you have to have something for the substitute teacher to do.
Right. That too. Exactly. That too.
Well, Mark, this has been so fun. I hope you stay weird.
Oh, there is no question. I hope one day you get to meet my son because you're going to be like, oh, no, he hasn't changed. He just gave it to the younger generation. And now they're just as weird. My kid is such an oddball. He is so weird. And I couldn't be prouder. No, there are no concerns about me losing my weirdness.
That's good. That's really good. Thank you for being my guest.
No, of course. Anytime you want me to pop on, I'm sure you remember from me being your student, I will find any excuse to talk. So
yes, that's true.
Don't you worry about that.
I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. You'll find the show notes for this episode at my website, Sage Woman Chronicles at sagewoman.life. You can leave a comment there. And remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.